Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our Stephen King retrospective with Dr. Sleep, directed by Mike Flanagan and starring Ewan MacGregor as Danny Torrance, the boy who escaped the Overlook Hotel at the end of The Shining. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, editor of this summer's Castle of Horror anthology and the upcoming Young Captain Nemo Quest for the Nautilus. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, writer of the long-running underground comic series Halloween Man and winner of the 2018 Best of Austin Award, 2019 nominee from the Austin Chronicle, Mr. Drew Edwards. Say hello.
Oh, hello there.
Hello there. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary, the woman who went to see this movie with me, attorney Julia Guzman. Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello, Julia.
I believe it's actually, well, hi there.
Well,
Outquoted.
all right. Dr. Sleep, spelled out, Dr. Sleep, is a 2019 American horror film based on the 2013 novel of the same name by Stephen King. It is a sequel to King's 1977 novel. Well, it's a sequel to The Shining, or rather, this movie is based on a novel that is a sequel to the novel The Shining. The film followed up the 1980 film adaptation of The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick. It's set a bunch of decades after the events of the original and combines elements of the 1977 novel as well. That's a lot. And we're going to try to get into that to the extent that any of us think it's worth it. Dr. Sleep is written, directed, and edited by Mr. Mike Flanagan, the guy who brought us The Haunting of Hill House. So that is a high wattage talent. It stars Ewan MacGregor as Danny Torrance, a man with psychic abilities who struggles with childhood trauma. Rebecca Ferguson, Kylie Curran in her film debut, and Cliff Curtis have supporting roles. All right, opening thoughts. Dr. Sleep. I'm going to go Julia, Drew, Tony, and then I'll go, Julia, you get to kick this off. Give me a short thought of your opening thoughts on Dr. Sleep.
Well, I can give a short thought, but I have a feeling it's going to be a long conversation because there's a lot to say about this movie. I found it to be compelling and very scary at times, traumatizing at times. There's definitely, I have a lot of little criticisms, but they're like more minor things than major things. But overall, thought it was a good film. I think the acting is great, aside from the fact that people can't figure out what accents they're doing at any given time. But there's some great characters. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun discussion. I'm curious to know what everybody thinks about bringing back scenes, remaking scenes from The Shining and putting them in this. I don't know what I think about it. I think it was okay, but I could have taken it or left it.
Yes.
But I think it'll be a fun conversation. It's got a lot of good bits. Like I said, there's some distracting, silly things like the weather in the Overlook. I was really confused by that. We'll talk about that. I was really confused by a few things.
Oh yes, I'm glad
but anyway, lots of things. But yeah, I've got a lot to say. But like you said, short.
All right, excellent. Mr. Drew, Dr. Sleep thoughts.
So I was pretty excited about this movie from the first trailer, and I really enjoyed this guy's this director's radical, to say the least, reimagining of The Haunting. So I thought this had the potential to be a pretty cool movie. When I sat down and I watched it, it actually has taken me this many days to come around to whether or not I am a thumbs up or a thumbs down on this movie, because I just feel like there was so much to take in. And because like you have one level, it's this weird, like if Stanley Kubrick and Stephen King had a baby situation that the movie is, then you have all this stuff that doesn't really come from either of them. You have the Mike Flanagan stuff that is his tics as a director, and some of the stuff in the movie that exists is that is the most interesting, actually, is that stuff. I have never read the book Dr. Sleep. I have read The Shining, and I have seen both filmed versions. So that's how I was coming at this, from largely a case of interest. But so now, like, having just stated this movie and picked it apart in my brain for days, dare I say the best Stephen King adaptation to come out this year. And I actually am one that really liked It Chapter 2, but I think this is probably a bit better, at least a little bit more adult, even though both of those movies are basically about childhood trauma. I really enjoy actually all of the recreations of the scenes from the original movie, and I will save the rest of my thoughts from that. But I think this is a very well done movie. I do think that maybe it would have benefited from being a mini series though, because it is very long, and I think I think maybe that not that I mind watching a nearly 3-hour long horror film. I think I'm definitely the audience for that.
Yeah.
But I question, when I look at this, the box office that this movie got, I question how many more people in the world who are out there who want to watch a nearly 3-hour long horror movie.
Yeah. I think you might have landed on something super important. Tony, what are your thoughts?
I actually I like it a lot. I was super bummed out by it.
Yeah.
Well, especially
Same.
while I was watching it. It's weird. It's in some ways I found it rougher. I think because it deals with trauma in such a realistic way and how that all plays out. I was more bummed out than it in a lot of ways.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know. I always have it where, I've said it many times, kind of films are what you kind of bring into the theater with you. And the fact that it feels like so many people get away with so much evil, that how traumatic things are and how the true knot is portrayed in the film, especially, just really bummed me out.
Sure.
It's real. I like the film. I'm also a little torn. I really like all the callback. I like that it's a sequel to the movie, which is an interesting choice.
Yes.
You do a movie, and so therefore you do a sequel to the movie.
Right.
I'm torn between, is it too fan servicey or not? And I came out on the other side thinking, no, actually, I think that stuff's cool. But it does feel a little heavy-handed sometimes. But I think it works really well. So I got really torn at the time, and I think I came out on the other side as, no, okay, that was cool. The doctor's office, people actually just laughed out loud, in delight. Actually, they weren't like, "Oh, that's stupid." It was like, "Oh, hey, look, here's a little thing that we share." Well before any of the Overlook, the doctor's office.
The fact that it's the same office that the caretaker interview was. Okay,
right,
yeah,
exactly.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
There was people who were into the movie, the original movie. There's a lot there for them. I think it's a great adaptation. I hadn't read the book, but I was reading up on what was different. I find it interesting that the movie, according to what I've read, skews darker than the book. Actually,
I've read the book, and I can respond to that. Did you have anything else, or did you want me to?
No. I think I enjoyed it overall. But I'm curious. I'm curious to discuss it.
Me too. Listen, I know exactly what you're talking about. I thought that this, in the end, had my first of all, my short take on it. It is a fan's delight. It is an interesting choice to just go, we are doing an adaptation of the movie, and because or we're doing a sequel to the movie, and so we're going to change what's in the book so that we can fit a universe where the events of the movie happened. And then it also means that they're free to lift plot points from the original book that didn't get used by Kubrick here, which we'll get to. I will say, coming out of this, it is very rare. I would never have had to say this about It Chapter 2 or anything, but with this one, I gotta warn people. I mean, like, you ain't seen nothing like a kid being tortured to death that you get to see in this movie. There's nothing like that in The Shining. There's nothing like that.
Yeah, that's the most traumatic part.
Not since the teenagers ran over a little kid's head in Toxic Avenger have I seen anything as frightening and disturbing as that scene. So it's funny, this movie comes in as a big like a Hollywood big event, and so I think a lot of people are like, they're kind of getting on the ride and they don't know like quite what they're in for. The funny thing is, that's as dark as the movie gets, and the rest of the movie, to me, is more or less on the level of like It. or something as far the movies as far as levels of disturbing, but it hits some really high points. Overall, I enjoyed it. I mean,
So
I'm looking forward to discussing it.
We've already, since we do this as hey, there are spoilers. I have a question,
Yes.
since you're the only person who read the book. And
Yes.
Another thing that bummed me out.
And we may as well start there. Whatever you like. So that sounds good.
Just as a comparison, just one thing, since I have to ask you, and I just waited. I didn't chat with you beforehand or anything.
Yeah.
The girl and the baby, are they really dead in the book?
The funny thing is, I think so. I think that's right.
Oh,
I can't remember.
Man. That's dark as hell.
No, it's
That's
so
quite
that
dark.
is. Yeah, I'm with Tony. I really
Julia,
felt
go ahead and
so.
explain it for the listener who,
Well,
for some reason,
I felt so
wants a spoiler
depressed.
special without listening.
Right.
Without reading
I
it.
felt
Yeah.
so depressed by both of the things that you've just mentioned. The fact, okay, so and I'm gonna try not to talk all over the place. So basically, we meet Danny Torrance as an adult who has become just a complete mess, drug addicted alcoholic who's trying to escape the thoughts and the hauntings and everything that he has. And he's haunted by the ghosts, by some of the ghosts of the Overlook, and also just by the trauma of his dad and all that. So we see that he wakes up next to this girl who is unconscious, maybe asleep, maybe not, whatever, after a night of presumably just doing drugs all night. So he leaves her room and realizes that his money's gone. So he goes to steal her money. And as he's walking out, a little toddler, like a 1-year-old, kind of walks out of a room. And he's like, oh my gosh, this, I guess she has a kid, whatever. So I believe he gives him a bag of Fritos or something, some kind of bag of snacks.
It looked like Cheez-Its.
Yeah, Cheez-Its, whatever. And sets him with his dirty diaper on the bed next to the unconscious mom, and leaves right after getting a stern talking to from the ghost of Dick Halloran, who says, come on, man, you shouldn't take her money. I mean, dude, seriously. Yeah. Anyway, so we find out later, we see a ghost of her and the toddler, which means not only was she dead, but the baby then died from neglect after he left it, and the baby was fine when he left. So that is like, that was traumatizing for me, that he has to now deal with the fact that this baby is dead. The woman is dead because of both of them, but the baby is dead because of him. You know what I mean? He left him.
There's no way that he would have known. I mean, I think really he thought that she was just passed out.
Still, the point is, he is drugged out and he's a mess, so he's not doing the responsible thing. Because the responsible thing is
that's kind of the whole point. He bottomed out because
exactly.
He was on the road of becoming his dad, essentially.
Yes, right. That's his rock bottom, and then he goes to AA, and he's 8 years sober when the rest of the film takes place. And he has figured out how to put the ghosts into lock boxes, thanks to I guess he figured that out earlier. He figured that earlier.
I want to hit on something real quick though, because that's really, really well. I want to talk about the lock boxes, but before that, the bottoming out and the way that AA is treated as different people have different experiences with AA, but in the universe of The Shining, AA is a thing that works and works for everybody. If it works when you work it, and it works for him. And that was his rock bottom. But what's really fascinating is, if we are to take what happened in this movie as true, then Danny Torrance is responsible for a lot more death than Jack, because Jack, in the end, basically killed himself. Oh, and Dick. Sorry, Jack killed Dick. Danny appears to kill a guy in a bar.
Or he at least beats the shit out of him. That guy's in the hospital, bare minimum.
Right. Yeah, and the might be dead. They don't know. They certainly don't know if he's dead. Yeah, that man. I mean, and that is the catalyst for a lot of the stuff. But again, watching it and I think I'm just more receptive to stuff like that lately, or on the news, and just tragedy. And I was throughout most of the movie, I was just super bummed. I came home kind of bummed. It's a horror movie, so you're dealing with X amount of stuff.
Right.
I kind of knew what I was going into. But
this deals with stuff that other horror movies don't do, like the drugs and alcohol and that kind of stuff. That's very real.
Yes.
Stuff. In other words, this isn't just like monsters or like psychos in masks and stuff
Well,
like
and again, the killing of the kid. So, I mean, I really feel like if we're going to talk about that thing, we have to talk about the other thing, which is that, we see them abduct a little girl, but we don't see her get killed. But then we see them abduct a boy, and they bleed him. They stab
That's
him,
kind of jumping ahead a bit.
No, but I'm just saying those are the two things that are, because I think the theme right now is why this is such a disturbing and depressing film. And those are the two things that to me are so tough to watch, is that, especially the kid, because the kid getting murdered and screaming and being in pain and them getting off on it, that's very real too. Not this, obviously not the fact that they're energy vampires, but the fact that they are, torturing a child. That happens. And so to have to see it and hear it, it's just, I mean, God, that really fucked me up big time. It really did. And then to read that, I was just reading the IMDb that says that that the kid playing that part, his first take of his death scene was so intense that it scared and surprised the other actors, including Rebecca Ferguson. And she was so horrified, she was stammering and couldn't get her lines out. When the scene was over, he just jumped up, grinning, covered in fake blood, high-fived his dad, and walked over to get some snacks. And everybody else was just like, they were all like shell-shocked and traumatized. And I'm just like, reading that actually made me feel better, because I was so upset about this kid's horrible murder. And I'm just like, well, at least the actor's fine, I guess.
Yeah, at least hopefully he doesn't have to have therapy in the end.
It sounds like he was just fine.
He's make-believe. He's pretending. Yeah.
Well, that's very similar to what the kid in the Shining miniseries was saying, where he had already been in a Hellraiser movie. So to him, all of this was a hilarious bunch of
Well, geez,
play
compared to like the Ghosts in the Shining miniseries, you could compare them to even the most poorly designed Cenobite. That's worlds apart.
I think that's the thing about King, though. I will say that it, like, for example, in Pet Sematary, the sister to me was the scariest part of both the movie and the book. Way more disturbing than any of the kind of zombification and undead children and all of that. I think all of that stuff, and again, because it's so real, and I think that's something King's really good at. People can,
and it bums you out. It makes you think about.
I
interrupted you. I'm so sorry.
No, people can think about whatever they can say. You can say what you want about King, but I think that's one of his strongest suits. Is the added. There's a certain amount of realism to the people he puts in his books that. I think that's why a big part of why he's successful.
What strikes me is that if Danny is able to stand up in AA in this world, in the universe of The Shining, where AA works if you work it, so keep coming back, then that means that that in this world, what Danny says is true. Jack could have come back the same way that Danny comes back. If Danny is responsible for more deaths than Jack was, then it means that Jack would have been able to get healthy as well if he hadn't been attacked the way that anybody can be attacked, if he hadn't been attacked by the monstrous hotel that is the Overlook.
Sure, but you'd have to have reached a rock bottom of some kind.
Yeah, but true enough. And but depending on how you want to read Jack Nicholson in The Shining, his rock bottom was supposedly 5 months ago, and he hasn't drunk since. His rock bottom was supposed to be when he breaks Danny's arm, and it just so happens.
Right, but then he's a dry drunk. He's not actually doing the AA program in the movie in the series. He is.
But in this movie, they've fiddled with it a little bit. That's what's interesting. Is this is a sequel to the movie, but they're gaslighting us slightly, because like Danny stands up in AA when he gets his 8-year chip, and he says, "My father stood in a room like this." So at least Danny believes that Jack Torrance was availing himself of the services of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Well, I think maybe he thinks he went to a meeting and then he would have given anything to be able to have been here 8 years later, I think is what he says. Probably. But yeah, okay, you might be right. You might have started it.
But what's interesting is that this movie is like many, many movies. First of all, it's 3 hours long. So we have this long first act where...
before we get into any of the other stuff, I really want to talk about, because we jumped over all the stuff is Danny is a little kid, where they have... First of all, recast Wendy.
Were you confused at the beginning? Drew? Like, did you feel like you were watching old footage, or did you know it was new footage?
I knew it was new footage. I thought they did a really good job of finding somebody that could kind of match the sort of weird cadence that Shelley Duvall has
yes.
in The Shining. Which really impressed me.
Yes.
I think some of the most compelling stuff in this movie, or at least the thing that I thought was the most interesting thing to me, was the idea that the ghosts were leaving the Overlook and going after Danny, and he had to like figure out a way, or Dick Halloran had to teach him a way to defend himself, and like this whole like sequence.
Obi-Wan Dick Halloran. We now have a universe of Force ghosts where I'm being sarcastic, but not really. I mean, you just go with it. That's the universe that this movie is now. Dick is a Force ghost who can pop up and give Danny advice, which I don't know. Oh, okay, let me throw it out to you guys. All right, I liked it. It's funny. It plays for laughs. It's good. I was fine with it. Do you feel like that was too silly?
No, I think that's great, and I especially think it's funny that he is stuck there. He's like, "Oh my God, I don't want to be here. This is all you." I'm like on the hook. I'm on the hook for you. I'm on the hook with you. Now you got to go. You got to go help this kid, just like I have to help you.
Well, I thought that was a very because Dick survives in the book. He gets killed in the movie, but he's in Dr. Sleep, and I felt like this was a pretty good way of. It's really the only solution you can have on this. I want to know, what did everybody think about seeing the shower room? The
wonderful.
So okay. The shower ghost at first is a little creepy, but then to me she just becomes played for laughs, and she becomes the character from Monsters Inc. that if you look at the quote unquote outtakes at the end, she just pops out and goes, like, what does she say, surprise? Or she'll be
always
like
hello.
And it's just like hilarious. It started to become just where she was just funny. Like she wasn't creepy anymore, which I don't know if I think that's fine. It didn't bother me. But at first she was creepy, but then it was just like, okay, come on. It's like 4 times she's shown up.
I love the business though, because she's so scary in the original Shining. Like she's the scariest ghost in that movie.
Yeah, she attacks Danny.
And I love the business after he gets his sort of anti-ghost training from Dick Halloran. I love the whole business of like Danny very confidently striding into the bathroom and like shutting the door behind him, and suddenly you hear her screaming. Like I don't know why, but because somebody that was so freaked out by that ghost every time I saw that movie as a kid, there was like the adult me was like, yeah, show her who's boss, Danny.
Well, it also makes you feel better that, I mean, even though he does end up being pretty screwed up, it makes you feel better that at least the kid's not going to continue to be haunted by these people now.
Right. Yeah. Tony, you were going to say something?
No, I agree. I think that it also gives the closure of, okay, well, now Danny's able to deal with some of his stuff. Now we see that wasn't really so much the case once we, fast forward. But that's on the road to him actually not just being, fairly almost comatose.
Yeah. He'll always be haunted.
Nobody's coming out of what he went through in Overlook unscathed, right?
He'll always be haunted by the trauma and the memories, but at least he's not actually haunted by the actual ghosts.
Right.
Well, I mean, one could look at this metaphorically as a kind of avoidance, because he's literally boxing up his bad memories and putting them away until such a time that they become useful, which we will get into later.
Wow, that's really good.
Well, that's a great, you know what, Drew? That's a really great point, because that is such a good metaphor for how we deal with trauma ourselves, where we're just like, okay, we're just going to shut this in the little corner, and then eventually, if you decide to do so, you can explore that either with therapy or with whatever modality you want to choose to bring that stuff out and deal with it. But until then, it's shut away. I think that's brilliant. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I didn't think about that.
Thank you. Well, I learned that from the time that I also had to kill a group of psychic vampires using an army of ghosts.
Well, that'll be a story for another time.
So the woman who plays Wendy, Alex Esso, she does. First of all, she looks great. She's got the hair, and she does a Shelley Duvall impression that
but a really
is
subtle one. It's not like
to
a
die for.
caricature.
It's so neat. I mean, so all the and we may as well just talk about all the recastings. I mean, the guy who plays Dick Halloran is Carl Lumley, who was Mantis and has been on a bunch of TV shows.
He
He's
was the
younger than
Martian Manhunter on Justice League.
Oh, that's right. And he's younger than Scatman was, but he plays a good Scatman without doing a Scatman impression.
And I think that's what's really great about the casting. Is everybody feels like they fit in from the original movie.
Yeah.
But nobody's, hey, I need to be exactly that person. And it doesn't, to me, it wasn't hokey. It was, these are the characters. In the same way that you might have a character that you like in a series, and then another series comes out, somebody else is playing that character.
Yeah.
And you're kind of okay with that because the character is played well.
Yes.
Despite
the character
fact,
goes on.
And that's great. And I think they did the choices of actors and actresses that they got. The casting on that is spot on, and none of it felt egregious, in my opinion.
Well, if I may jump ahead for a second, is that
Sure.
okay?
Yeah.
So if you were to make a have to write a thesis as to why this movie exists, there are two scenes in this movie that I think I was especially impressed with. I'm going to hold off on one until we get to talking about another character. But there's a scene at towards the very end at the Overlook where Danny sits down at the bar, and he appears to be talking to Lloyd, the bartender ghost.
Yes.
And then they slowly reveal that he is now talking to the ghost of his father, which is become the bartender ghost now. He's trapped in the Overlook in this role. And that scene was so, like, the interaction between the two of them and the dialogue and everything. And the actor, they've made up to look kind of like Jack Nicholson, but he
First of all, from The Haunting of Hill House,
that's Henry Thomas.
Yeah. And he doesn't ape Jack Nicholson's Jack Nicholson's voice, especially. He does it a couple of times, but not heavily. And I think, to me, that was one of the scenes where I was kind of like, if you had to give me a reason, is like, why did this movie have to exist? It's like that conversation between a traumatized child and the father who does the traumatizing, and the way it's framed, and then the way they kind of have the slow reveal of the Jack Nicholson-ness of it all. Like, it's very, very artistically done. And I was so impressed with that scene.
Yeah, it doesn't feel, like I said, like a caricature. It doesn't feel like somebody's doing a comedy bit. It's just you see, as soon as you see his profile, you go, dude, he looks a lot like Jack Nicholson. That's really cool. And then but he's not quite talking like him, but then occasionally something will kind of come out that sounds a little bit like Jack Nicholson. But part of that is that they don't want to, again, make it a caricature, and part of it is that he's pretending, he thinks he is Lloyd, the bartender. So it's very interesting.
Damn, I wish they would have done that in Star Wars instead of what they did there.
What do you mean?
You mean it had a different actor?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Do that from now on. When you have this idea of like doing CG bullshit like that,
let Jaden
do
Smith,
what they did in this movie.
Let Jaden Smith play Will Smith.
Yes.
It's a really great point. I was reading an interview with Flanagan, and they said that that the studio had kind of floated that idea by him, but he finds that sort of thing distracting, which I 100% agree with. I would much rather see a skilled actor bring their own kind of energy and sort of recreate a character, rather than like have a digital
you're right.
Brothers or a digital Jack Nicholson.
It might have been interesting to have Jack Nicholson dub the lines. I wonder how that would have been.
First of all, his voice will be very different after 40
years.
But
he can make it, and they could digitize that a little bit.
I guess that's true. But I mean, so what Henry Thomas is doing, they've got Henry Thomas. He's a very good actor, and of course Mike Flanagan loves him because he was in The Haunting of Hill House as the wonderfully just embattled father there. So he's wearing the Jack outfit. He's got the Jack stubble. He's got the baldness and the long hair, and he has the patter
The
of
eyebrow.
and that script though, which had a sort of a rhythm that this movie doesn't have, where characters would sort of repeat themselves and do stuff like that. So he's talking like the Jack from the 1980, but he's not doing a Nicholson impression. It's amazing. By the way, I can think of one example of a recasting where the actor does an impression of the other and it worked great, and that was Carl Urban doing DeForest Kelly. That is my only time.
And Ewan MacGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi.
True,
Yeah.
that's
I
a
mean,
good point.
It can work, but I think it's, again, I think some of those choices, what works best, again, in my opinion, is when the actor is playing the character and not, I'm going to be that other actor.
Not doing the impression, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. He must have just decided, you know what, this is what Bones talks like.
Yeah. And I think that's fair. It can work. It's not, it's, you know, if it works for you, that's fine.
Yeah.
You have to be a pretty damn good actor to really. Would you have people doing that all? But you do have to have it. So the people who are in biopics all the time have to be that person.
Oh God, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's important, and you know, many people do that extremely successfully. I think in this case, in where you no longer have the people who either want to or can do these parts. Having them portray the character, the casting and everything is fantastic. It worked really well.
So we've talked a little bit about the recastings. So and brilliantly, this movie then moves forward a number of years to the grown-up Danny, who's making the shitty decisions that he's making, and that gives us lots of distance between him as that child and. We go, okay, fine. Ewan MacGregor is grown up Danny, and he has a whole new cast of characters, which takes us into what I might call episode 2 of this near 3-hour movie, because it's really like 3 movies. There's Danny's crappy growing up and being a drunk, and then there's Danny's rebirth as a guy known as Dr. Sleep, and when the Dr. Sleep,
which is great because his childhood nickname is Doc.
That's true, for sure. Yeah. You know, and think about how we're meant to sort of accept that all of our hopes for Danny's potentiality are sort of dashed. He's in his 40s. He didn't really amount to much because he was never able to overcome his own traumas. And only now is he becoming a member of society that people look up to and that means something in the lives of the people that he's around. He goes to a small town. He starts doing work. He starts doing what the alcoholics would call the next right thing. He meets some wonderful people who give him a leg up. And Dr. Sleep is what they call him when he's just using his empathic parts of his abilities just to help people as they die. He's in a hospice. And this is a whole, if you cut out the fact that we're cutting away to bad guys doing bad guy stuff, this is a whole sleepy middle section of this movie.
Well, and we have the wonderful psychic cat.
Oh yeah,
which
is based on a cat that has been in the news a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was a lot of articles about a cat that they kept around, and on the one hand, people go, "Hey, is that really creepy?" But for some reason, it was strangely comforting. Or they normally they would probably be like, "Kick the cat out. That's weird and awful."
Yeah.
Although I kept hoping, I'm really glad nothing happened to the cat because I was really concerned. But there could be a whole Dr. Sleep movie that had no psychic vampires. It's just about a man confronting his own existence and using his powers or his empathy to help people transition. That could be its own
but then it's not a horror film because obviously we don't have enough ghosts to be a horror film, so we got to add something else. So we're going to throw in these psychic vampires. So we probably should talk about them.
Yeah. So we'll leave Danny there in the long Act 2 of this movie. Which again, I'm happy when watching it. I don't need it to be any shorter. I'm just saying. Drew's damn right. This is basically a TV miniseries that's been crammed down to 2.5 hours. It really feels like that. But yeah, we'll leave Danny there for a moment, becoming a useful member of society and having a cat that predicts people's death and whatever. So we got to talk about the bad guys, and then we'll talk about Abra. So the True Knot, led by Rose the Hat.
I love Rose. The only thing I didn't like about Rose, like I said, is that her stupid accent just kept changing, and it just bugged
I kind of thought that
me.
was deliberate, though. because she's
know.
supposed to be really old and have lived a lot of different
No, but
places.
her accent changes from
Yeah.
when she talks to the little girl to when she's like just for these last couple of years. You know what I mean? Like it's not in the last,
I
guess,
took
8
that
years.
as a deliberate. I don't know. I took that as a deliberate inflection.
I was with Drew.
Mm.
I was with Drew on this.
Well,
I
that annoyed
don't.
me.
I'm with Julia. Like it was all over the map in my opinion, but also the Navy Six has it's like, well, we could get Stevie Nicks, but here's somebody who's not exactly
Okay.
like.
So what is the style of the True Knot? I'm trying to work out like what the heck this.
Well,
Manson family meets the Partridge family.
Meets,
It's
I would say
so-
the Manson family meets the Partridge family meets the Romani because it's they're
also
like very,
absolutely Near Dark is part of that.
yeah.
Down
Yeah,
to
definitely Near Dark.
the part where they kill the kid, and it's basically a set from Near Dark. I mean, it's so close, which I think is great. If you're gonna have an homage, like do that upright, and I think they did it. But there were
So
some
Drew and
hits
I were
where it
talking
fell.
about Near Dark, and I said that I never liked Near Dark because it appeared to have been costumed by Guns N' Roses, and that's sort of.
That's
I
kind of
feel
the
like
point,
Lost
though.
Boys is far more Guns N' Roses than
Absolutely,
Near Dark.
absolutely.
They, like Near Dark is a little too grungy and punk rock. I mean they're
Yeah,
both
but I
rock
think
and
of
roll
Lost
vampires.
Boys as being like more like, frankly, if Erasure had costumes. I
Yeah,
mean,
there's
you
some
know,
definite hair metal hair in
that's true.
Lost Boys. I mean,
That-
they're '80s rock and roll vampires, so we're kind of
Yeah, we are
waxing-
slicing the thread pretty
That's,
thin.
Near Dark is way more CBGBs and way less
Yes.
Sunset Strip.
Yes.
If we're gonna make analogies, like Lost
None
Boys
of
and
the
Sunset
vampires
Strip.
none of the vampires in Lost Boys are as weird looking as Lance Henriksen.
That's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, what you got here?
So-
all these people are wearing these raggedy rock and roll T-shirts, and she's got her
they're just kind of cool, whatever.
slash hat, and it just I
A
don't
magic
know.
hat.
I
But so they go and so she and her boyfriend Crow go and he's been watching this blonde chick who's like 15, and she
Yeah,
likes
right.
to yes, well the character's 15.
15 going on 30.
Whatever, the character's 15, and so she at least that's what she says. So she's been pulling getting guys who are into little girls and using her pusher powers, her hypnosis powers, to make them go to sleep, and then she carves into their cheeks so that they have like a permanent tattoo, so that they're marked basically. So they see that she's got these abilities. They decide they're going to turn her into one of them. They don't actually tell her what is going to happen, just that basically, she gets to be young for a lot longer, not forever, but for a lot longer. And so they turn her by just feeding her. Apparently, if you just feed on the steam. So this is one of the things that bugs me, is that he calls it the shining or the shine. Danny does, and Dick Halloran, and then they call it steam, which is like the energy of people. But people who have a little bit of a psychic ability. And then the little girl Abra calls it magic. And I'm just like, okay, I get that these people don't know each other, so there's no reason why they would have a common term, but can we just decide on a term?
I'm
But anyways,
fine.
whenever
with
you feed on the steam, you become one of them. So now this poor girl is sucked into their circle. I say the poor girl, she's kind of horrible, but she's, a little bit of a vigilante, really.
Mhm.
So that's interesting. I do want to say real quick before you guys chime in on what you think about these people, that I was really thrown off by the fact that when Rose turns the little pusher girl into Snakebite Andy into into a vampire, she says, "Am I still human?" And she goes, "Do you care?" And when Dick Halloran shows up for the first time in like 8 years to Danny, he goes, "What? By the way, what happens to them while they're in those boxes?" And he goes, "Do you care?" That actually made me wonder if for a second if it was Dick wasn't actually somehow Rose playing a trick, because it was the same term, but it turns out that was just a random thing. But anyway,
that means that, frankly, that they maybe should have thought about that and not done that, because if it
just
throws you out of the scene because you're busy trying to figure out if this is a disguise for Rose the Hat, it's that. you only want to do stuff like that when it's useful.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm
Misdirect
talking about the
people.
these are the little things that bugged me. But overall, I liked it. So anyway, but yeah, what do you guys think of that whole crew?
I really liked Rose the Hat. I think that
Mhm.
she's a great horror movie villain. Like, she has all the stuff that you want from a
Yeah.
horror movie villain. Like, she's memorable looking, which I think, you look at all the
Mhm.
different horror movie villains throughout history of cinema.
Mm.
Most of them have a distinct look, and as much as like we were going over her wardrobe or not, like, gives her a silhouette that makes her instantly recognizable.
True.
You have the
Yeah.
same thing that like Freddy Krueger has, or Michael Myers, or even Frankenstein or something like that. Like, you would know who this character was by just their shadow.
Yeah.
I think the actress playing it really invested, though. Like, she's not just playing a character, even though she is really evil.
Mhm.
The stuff that she does to kids is horrible. So
Mhm.
this woman is a monster. You never get the sense that she thinks that she's that bad. And
Mhm.
I think there's a scene in the movie later on where she invades Abra's dreams, and Abra kind of turns the tables on her and comes at her as this like creepy eyeless version of herself, and she's going through this like filing cabinet of Abra's mind, and her hand gets stuck in it, and she's like
Ay,
trying
ay,
to pull
ay.
her hand out, and the flesh is getting ripped off. And I was thinking about this.
Which is a good homage to Gerald's Game.
Yes.
But aside
Yeah.
from that, I have never seen a film, a horror movie film, a horror movie where the villain, you would never see Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees. Well, okay, maybe Jason Voorhees and Freddy versus Jason, but very rarely do you see a horror movie villain portrayed as this vulnerable. And in that moment, she's sympathetic. You actually are kind of scared for her. And I thought the way they just flipped the switch, they flipped the script, so to speak, in that one scene, that to me was that was second best scene in the whole movie. Like, I always thought that was brilliant.
It was a very good scene.
I want to say real quick that the fact that Abra is able to actually physically injure her just with psychic ability made me really, again, another irritating thing, really annoyed that Danny says later on to Abra, "We won't be able to defeat her." I'm like, what? That girl can defeat her with her freaking eyes closed, literally.
Yeah.
You do not need the Overlook. I think that is a terrible plan, but we'll get to that in a minute. But I just want to say this is why I'm going to be really annoyed later when that all happens, because that kid is very powerful. That Abra is. She's a great character.
By the way, when we get to these points where the two psychics are fighting it out, like that wonderful, wonderful scene where Sarah Ferguson playing Rose the Hat, Rebecca Ferguson, sorry, sorry, where Rebecca Ferguson playing Rose the Hat realizes that Abra is in her brain in the supermarket.
Although Sarah Ferguson would have been interesting, but I don't think that would have been.
That is correct. I'm sorry.
Fergie would have been an interesting choice.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry.
These are the moments when Stephen King, and all this stuff is in the book, by the way. These are the moments when it's less of a horror movie and it's more a mutant powers movie, of good guys and bad guys engaged in these plots and harassing one another. It's practically an X-Men movie, and I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying these are the ones when you're most at home in the adventure aspect, because you just have people using superpowers at one another. It's interesting how this movie is both. Because think about, like, Stephen King sat down and he could have done a million things to say, what am I going to do? I'm finally going to do a sequel to The Shining about Danny. And what he didn't do was just remake The Shining. That could have been good, could have been bad, but he didn't do that. Instead, he's like, I'm going to come up with a mutant superpower story that involves these, psychopaths who are also, psychic vampires or whatever it is that they are. So I was just fascinated by that. I love all the superpower stuff.
I think that was honestly smart, because like, as iconic as The Shining has become, both as the book and the film version, I think if you had just done another let's go hang out in the haunted hotel again, I think people would have found that a bit, no pun intended, old hat.
And this movie does that, but it makes it Act 3, which if you're going to do it, it makes it make more sense. Although we'll get to that.
Yeah, you build
up.
up to it, and I mean, certainly, you know, they have callbacks throughout it, but like, you know, also Stephen King is fascinated by psychics. I mean, there's, you know, psychics and The Shining, and you know, you have stuff like Firestarter and Carrie. So like, it is something that he's obviously got a ongoing interest in.
And especially when it comes to, you know, adolescent girls and teenage girls. This young girl, Abra, I love that we meet her because she's at they're having a magic show for her birthday party, and the magician's like, oh, you know, look at these things I can do. She's like, I can do stuff like that too. And he's like, that's nice, sweetie. And then she goes in he's like wearing spoons on his nose and on his hands and whatever. And then when she goes into the parents go in the kitchen, and she has taken all the spoons in the house and made them stuck to the ceiling with magic.
Yeah.
And she's just so happy. She's like, abracadabra. It's so funny. But anyways, she's a fantastic character, super powerful, really neat. I love her so much.
Yeah, she's a good character.
I liked how kind of sadistic she was, which I don't think you normally allow.
She's creepy.
I mean, admittedly, the True Knot kind of has it coming because they're all.
That's her feeling. Is that they've got it. They've got it coming to them, and she's gonna
Once she knows that they've tortured and killed another child, and they're after her, like, I don't feel bad at all.
But
they've obviously done that multiple times.
Usually in this kind of movie, your hero character, particularly a character that's a young girl, would be portrayed as very virtuous and almost naive, whereas there is like a cynicism.
Well, because she's seen so many horrible things.
Yeah, I think that's really refreshing. I thought that was.
I agree with you.
That was interesting.
Obviously,
well, and then you have the poor friend who gets dragged into all this by Danny. That his I guess he's his sponsor or whatever. Anyway, that guy. And I was thinking that guy pretty quickly comes around to believing, once he knows what these people have done to children, that it's up to him to kill them.
Right. Yeah.
It's up to him and Danny, which I was like, this dude like really crossed over to cold-blooded homicide pretty damn quick.
I think once you've uncovered a dead kid body, like I think if you're not okay with killing the psychic vampires who did that, something's wrong with you. Also, by the way, anybody who writes, oh, kids are just virtuous, blah, 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 has never seen kids on a playground or ever dealt with bullies or any kind of anything. Because kids are, they can just be mean and evil.
Well, Drew is exactly right. What would have happened if this were, on TV in the 1970s is maybe she would come close to shooting one of them and somebody would go, no, Abra, if you shoot that person, you'll be just as bad as them.
You know better
and
than
this one's like,
right.
Nah, screw that, man. We're gonna lie in ambush and shoot
these
all
guys will only be stopped if we kill them because the cops can't do anything. Which is
it's
also they are literal monsters.
Vampires.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although they can be killed with bullets, which is cool.
That was interesting.
Well,
this is what I'm saying about this is why I say that I think it's ridiculous that he has this whole idea that they have to go to the Overlook, because we don't know that she can't be killed with bullets. Nobody's tried to kill her with bullets. Nobody's tried to do anything.
Well,
I don't know.
I mean, I'm not saying you don't have a point, but I mean, you want to go back to the Overlook, right?
Yeah, but I think we should have had a scene where they tried to kill her and weren't able to. We never have that scene. We have a scene where Abra is able to defeat her in, just like I say, psychically. I guess, and there's never a scene that shows us that she's any stronger than any of the other vampires.
I guess you're right, but
just add another 20 minutes to the
exactly.
You're
gonna it's in the TV miniseries version of this, they would have had time for that thing. Which I really do think. And nowadays, a few years ago, you could have made the argument that making this a movie, that plays in theaters gives it a prestige that television doesn't have. But that's not even really true anymore.
Right, I agree.
TV is considered to be really the more adult medium these days.
And Netflix and Hulu and Amazon. Yeah.
Imagine this is like something on Amazon or Netflix, and it's a 5-hour long mini series like that. I think people would have gone nuts for that.
Yeah, you're probably right.
as it is, they're doing a version of it for Netflix that's effectively that. They're taking what already played in the theater and turning it into that.
Yeah, they're doing a Loki show as well.
Oh my. No, but are you talking about they're going to take it and just add an extra hour to it?
Yeah, we talked about this when we talked about
I
it.
just
chapter
completely
2.
put that out of my head.
They are doing a version that is both movies put together. Plus,
right.
All the stuff that they did not put that they left out.
Yeah, that's the. Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Like they did with Hateful Eight.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, but to be fair, what I get where you're coming from, Julia, and I kind of agree, but I also think that what we're led to believe is that we should trust Danny and Abra's feelings.
Right.
That they know more than we do and go, we're really sure this isn't going to work.
But they didn't even say that. Like, they could have had a Doctor Strange moment where they go, okay, we've played this out a whole bunch of times and there's no way that we can defeat her. Something.
I hear you. I wasn't bothered by that as much myself.
Because once they go up there, he's really endangering her life.
Is that the? I'm just wondering why, of all the different parts of the plot, this is the one that sticks in your craw the most.
Because he's really endangering her life. They're going to go up there. They have no exit strategy.
Her life's in danger anyway.
Yeah, but he's making it way worse because now she's in danger because she's so psychic. Oh yeah, Yes, because she's so psychic that these ghosts in this house are going to completely tear her apart.
We should talk for a moment about.
She seems to acquit herself pretty well, but that's she basically bitch slaps the ghost in 237. So
yeah, but he doesn't know that's going to happen. Is my point. When he's making this plan, he's seeing the hotel that traumatized him, and he's going, "This seems like a good place to bring a kid." I just think
gonna have to go with it. Now, let me just tell you what happened in the book. I just before we go into discussing Act 3 in earnest. We have established that Julia does not think it's wise. And let me tell you something interesting. You are sensing a rift because this was not in the book. The book goes a completely different direction because remember, there is no Overlook Hotel in the book. In the book, Overlook Hotel blew up 40 years ago. so there is no Overlook. So they go to a campground that used to be the Overlook, and it's completely it's a completely utterly completely different sequence. Nothing that you see in this movie happened in the book version once you enter Act 3. And so they're just utterly different.
I have completely different logic issues with the Return to the Overlook, but they're utterly have nothing to do with what Julia has, which is I don't understand why there is still so much stuff. Like, I understand that it got closed down.
Yeah.
Right? Why is the typewriter still there? Why is all the furniture still there? All that stuff would have been sold off.
Nobody wants to go in there, and nobody wants to buy any of that stuff.
In the fiction of this movie, it was quote unquote left to rot, locked up and left to rot.
For like not even that bad of a murder, really. Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, like, I
don't think it's the murder. I think it's the ghosts that are the problem.
It's literally. I know Tony's thinking the same. You just have to roll with it. That's just what the movie says. The movie says.
I get it. I get it, and it's very gothic and spooky. But police auctions are a thing. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
No, but I don't think so. I think if you condemn a place, I don't know that you necessarily go in and get the stuff out. I think
you do.
You totally do. That's what police auctions are.
Yeah, but there are places. I get where you're coming from, but there are places where people go into them and go,
yeah, if it's like a crack
why
house,
didn't they sell all this stuff?
Yeah, a condemned crack house. You're not going to go
like a multi-million-dollar resort. They would have gutted that thing.
It's impossible to say. Weird stuff happens. It's a lot to ask to think that all the weird stuff would have happened to this particular place, but then who knows? But I mean, like, there's plenty of grocery stores that we've discovered in recent years. They got closed, and when Mom and Pop died in 1956, and the grocery store closed up, and nobody ever bothered to like go in and clean out all the cereal boxes. I mean, that stuff happens, so we're just gonna go.
This is the best hotel in the Rockies.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. You just have to go with it. The same way that Julia has a problem with the logic of them going there in the first place.
Okay, I go with it because they want it there for the visual continuity, and I accept it because all that stuff looks cool.
It's rule of cool. I mean, if it wasn't here, then what we would have had to have done is establish that Danny walked in and cyclically just used ectoplasm to rebuild everything. Hey, there's
Well, you
needs to
know
be a
what?
typewriter
Now that
here.
you say that, that actually would have made more sense if when he woke the place up, everything suddenly appeared like it does because in the movie, in The Shining, that's what happens is suddenly there will be tables and chairs that were not there, or whatever. There will be wine, there will be things will appear that were not there. I think that would have been a better illusion, is if he walks in, everything is empty and cobwebbed, and then as soon as he wakes the place up, suddenly it looks just like it did. I think that'd be kind of cool.
They wanted to have the whole business of him turning on the boiler because they're bringing in that part from the book and the TV miniseries.
That's my point, is that when he did that, whatever, like any of the stuff he's doing to quote unquote wake the place up, that could have also recreated the illusion. I think that would
Okay, can I say something here really quickly? I was just, when I was watching this, see, to me, all right, you guys have made excellent points about why none of this should be happening. Nevertheless, when they get up there, and Joy, in a second we'll talk about that, but when they get up there to this place, and he walks in and he goes, I'm going to go wake this old bitch up, whatever it is he says. And then we have a scene, the only example I can think of like this in cinema history was Admiral Kirk spending 8 freaking minutes riding around the Enterprise. This is just, I'm loving it. By the way, I'm loving it. It's pure fan service. This is crazy bullshit. It is just like minute after minute after minute of Ewan MacGregor slowly touring the Overlook. Who for? For us. For us just to go, oh, I know that cigarette machine. Oh, I recognize that door. And
even though all of this has been rebuilt for this movie, none of it existed.
It's so great. It's like pure. It's like going on a movie ride. It's like going on the Shining ride, and you get to explore the Overlook with Ewan MacGregor. I mean, for me, this is what the movie's for, So I'm totally down with.
Yeah, if this acting biz doesn't work out, he can.
Right.
He can just do the Ewan MacGregor Overlook tour. I guess it'll be a set since it's a set, but there you go.
Oh man, it's
I really wish you wouldn't call me Danny, but okay, since I'm giving this tour. That 70-year-old Ewan MacGregor with a lightsaber for some reason. He's just
I mean,
crossover.
I agree with you ultimately, Jason. Like I think that you want, just as much as like this movie, is telling its own story, it's also trying to make Stephen King and Stanley Kubrick kiss and make up. And this is really the only way you can do that, is visually. And I like all that. And hell, like one of the best callbacks in this whole movie is Rose the Hat walking by the elevator, and the blood starts coming out of the elevator. And instead of getting scared, she just kind of smirks.
No, it wasn't Rose that. Oh yeah, it was.
Yeah. And she thinks it's hilarious.
It was Abra, but you're right.
It's hilarious.
But Abra also does that. Abra also just kind of is like, about things that she sees.
Yeah.
But Rose is like, good job. Blood everywhere. I would do that. I see your point. Thank you for showing me this amazing
she appreciates. Yeah, she appreciates good
Overlook. And here's why this plan does make a little bit of the sense because the ghosts school her.
Yeah.
Like Abra tries when they're in the maze, because they have the whole sequence where they go back to the hedge maze, and Abra tries to take her down and she can't.
Yeah.
Whereas like when Danny releases all the ghosts, they kill her in like 5 seconds flat.
That's true.
They rip her to pieces.
Right. That's true. And that obviously was what he wanted to have happen. But then, I mean, the question is, what was he hoping to have happen next? Because like now they're still there, they're still out. He can't just box them all up all at once like that. So anyway, but I want to say one real quick thing before we get into that more. Another thing that really pulled me out of this film and just very distracting is what the hell season this is supposed to be, because it apparently is the hotel is covered in snow and there's snow everywhere. The road was kind of covered in snow, but not so bad that he couldn't drive his little, what kind of car was it? Like
it's a Toyota Corolla. It looks to me like. It looks to me like a Toyota
kind of drives
Corolla.
a car. we don't see a scene where they put chains on it. They don't have any gloves on. They don't have scarves or hats. They have like jackets, and that's it. And nobody's cold, and nobody seems to have any problem getting up there. I guess I'm forgetting from The Shining, the movie, how far the Overlook is supposed to be from town. But according to the Shining miniseries, it was 37 miles, and yet when it burns up, when it sets on fire, the fire department gets there within minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, okay. So that part just threw me off because I spent way too much time puzzling, like what the heck, what season is this? Where are they located? But anyway, so back to the ghost though.
I liked
yes.
but before you go back to your point about that, all that was fascinating, and clearly they didn't care. They just clearly didn't give a shit. I did really like the business. This was neat business. This was like something out of a Western, where you'll see Rose coming because she's going to have to be driving down those switchbacks that you can see miles away. So as long as she's taking the only road in, you're going to see her long before she gets here. That's great. I mean, how cool is that? That's like something like with John Wayne and Jeff Hunter or something like that. I mean, that's awesome.
Well, honestly, the whole showdown in the Colorado Lounge is very Western, but it's not, because they're also following the body movements of Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, that's true. So true. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So there's so many moments where they just do a neat. This is what you were talking about fan service, I guess, right? I mean, and I don't know. I'm here for it. I guess what I'm saying is I'm a real sucker for fan service. I love this kind of stuff. Okay, Joya, I interrupted you. You were saying something.
Well, anyway, so no, I was just going back to the ghosts. He once they realize that they do need the help of the ghosts, which is why he came here to begin with. He opens up all of the boxes that he's kept the ghosts in, so they can now come out and attack Rose the Hat, and they just, like you said, tear her to pieces, or they just dissolve her basically. And they're all also all inhaling the steam too, just like the vampires did. So apparently that's a thing that ghosts do as well, not just vampires.
Well, that was the whole thing why they wanted Danny so much, is he was juicing the Overlook while he was in there.
Yeah. And then, but like I said, then we're like, okay, what's his big plan aside from just run? Like, where's she supposed to run to? They're in the middle of nowhere. So she, takes off. He gets attacked by the ghost. It looks like he's dead for sure. But instead, they Jack Torrance him and take him over, his body over, and he grabs an axe and starts chasing the poor Abra around the hotel. And then, so of course, that's terrifying. That's terrifying because you're just like, now we're back at the.
Well, we also get the twins back. We get the great, like all the ghosts that you see from the first movie. Like, this is their big, which is like, if this was just following the book and you didn't have the Overlook Hotel. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but do they have any of this
No.
I mean, I know like the twins are a creation of Kubrick, but
no, I mean, it's been like 5 years since I've read it, but all I remember is you do get an assist, I think, from Jack's ghost, but all the other I honestly I can't remember. But it wasn't. The thing is, this has a visual aspect going for it, and it's just so much more
better
effective.
it's better for a film. Plus, if you're doing this story, which is a sequel to The Shining, I hate to say this, no disrespect, because we just did the TV miniseries. You couldn't do it as a sequel to that version. You have to do it to the Kubrick version, because that's the version everybody knows. Like, it is more cinematic. You have all these visual things like the elevator filled with blood and the twins and the weird carpet and all that stuff that you instantly know the world you're in just by the way it all looks.
Absolutely. And I'll be honest, I feel like this is a more effective ending for this story. I feel like the movie does better than the book did.
I am a little sad that Danny escapes the Overlook as a little boy only to die as a man. Like, that did make me a little...
that's a huge bummer.
Like, I get what they were doing, which was they were doing the ending from the Shining novel. But it just makes me sad for Danny. To survive that as a kid, but only have to come back there in the hotel ultimately does get him.
Well,
It's weird
there
because
was a choice to make the death toll so much higher in the movie. I guess so that the stakes were higher. But from what I was reading, the book, there's not nearly the same death toll.
Yeah, I mean, Danny doesn't die in the book. That's by the way, spoilers for the book, and I apologize.
Right, but Jack dies the way that Jack dies, like in the book, the way he dies in the miniseries, which is the way
I mean
that he does here.
Dr. Sleep Danny doesn't die.
I know. I'm saying that's because Jack, like, he basically takes Jack's place.
I see.
Because Jack didn't have that death.
He does end the menace of the Overlook. Although he kind of doesn't go off of the last scene in the movie, but
because he's a Force Ghost too.
Well, and we see that the 237 ghost is still around. But
actually, I guess Jack would be Anakin, and he'd just be I don't know, like, who would he be? Or no, he'd be Anakin, and Jack would be Darth Vader. I don't know. No, that's
completely lost as to.
I'm just trying to think how the Force Ghost would work if Jack was a bad guy, but now is a good guy and a Force Ghost, and now Danny's also a Force Ghost.
Well, that would make Jack Darth Vader and now Anakin. But
right,
it doesn't matter.
So then, exactly.
But in reality, let's call it correctly though. He's exactly Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, he's totally Obi-Wan Kenobi.
He's even training a young Jedi.
He really is. That's pretty funny. I wonder if that was intentional. Do you think that was intentional? Do you think that's a nod to Obi-Wan Kenobi?
I think it's impossible to escape, is what it is.
I don't know. I don't think it was, but there are some really cool intentional things that people have been calling out. For example, there's an A for Abra and a doll beside it for a K for Ka in her bedroom, and the bus line is Tet.
Wow.
When she gets off the bus, you can see it says like Tet Transportation or Tet. I can't remember the name, but I was like, oh, okay. So there's a lot of.
And we have to talk about, Tony, if we're going to talk about stuff that shows up, we got to talk about what the posters are in Abra's room. Do you want to tell us what those are?
So, the series Ruby that I work on, I've worked on since Ruby 3. Since we're part of Warner Brothers now. There's Ruby posters. Oh, and Emerald, there's a Emerald statue action figure that's beside her bed that they actually focus on, and Emerald's power is illusion, so it's kind of all in there, which is a really nice nod. It was bizarre to see it in the trailer, and I hadn't realized. I know our marketing team, I know a bunch of people work together to really kind of put that in, and if you're going to put up product placement, a show I work on, I'll take that.
That's super cool.
I work with a lot of talented people in all the departments, because as a tech director, I basically deal with all the departments. Like the whole animation studio is my department, to be honest with you, as far as what I deal with. But everybody, and I've seen those posters a million times at work. So seeing them, and it fits her age group as well. That's a big part of our demographic, and so that was really kind of cool to see that she's into Ruby, because it's also all magical girls, well, not all, but magical girls are at the center of it. Ruby, Weiss, Yang.
I just thought that was really neat.
That was cool. I had no idea how long they would spend in her bedroom. I would see these posters all the time and action figures and stuff. That was really cool.
Good point. It does become a major set piece. I'm sorry, go ahead, Joy.
No, I was just gonna say, we're talking about whether any of the stuff with actual Ewan MacGregor is deliberate, but think about. I was just looking at the IMDb about who else was considered for this movie, and I'm just like, I love to imagine how different these films would be if the people they thought about would be the ones who were in it. So it says Ewan MacGregor, Dan Stevens, Chris Evans, Matt Smith, the 11th Doctor, and Jeremy Renner, so two Avengers, were considered and actually have met with the director for the lead role. And then it also says, I'm trying to remember John Cusack had expressed interest in playing adult Danny Torrance. So I'm like, any of these people would have made this such a different movie. It's such an interesting, there wouldn't be all the Obi-Wan callbacks for one thing.
Well, the funny thing is, the concept of Force Ghosts is a concept that was clearly I don't remember it ever existing before Star Wars kind of made it. I can't. I just maybe you guys can think of an example that I can't think of, but we now can see it and just roll with it because Star Wars is in our lives.
I mean,
Before
I think
Star
in horror
Wars,
movies you've had ghost visitations from people informing
Yeah, I
people
mean-
and revenants and that kind of thing.
well, yeah,
Well,
Hamlet's dad comes
Yeah.
down and says, solve my murder or avenge me because your uncle killed me. But he doesn't stick around through the whole thing. I mean, Hamlet's dad doesn't keep coming back and going, I see you're having problems with Ophelia, although that would be funny. I
Look
mean,
behind
actually,
the curtain. Look behind the curtain. Yeah.
yes. It would actually be really funny if you redid it with King Hamlet coming around all the time going, God, that son of a bitch. I hate Claudius. Yeah.
just kind of puttering around the castle and
Okay, so going back to the ending,
Yes, anything to get us off this.
I just don't want to talk about Star Wars. I'm sorry. Something I did think is interesting is Stephen King has said this film has made him like the Stanley Kubrick Shining more, and he famously hates that movie. So he must have really liked this one.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can't remember where I apologize that I can't attribute it to a site or a thing, which I usually try to if I can.
Sure.
But I was reading somewhere where Flanagan shows King the film and he's super nervous. King basically gave him the thumbs up, said, "Yeah, you did it." How cool must that be?
Yeah.
Because it can't be. You've decided to make a sequel to the movie, which King hates, and it's your job to go show it to him. Hey, let me show you what I did to your book, by the way, which diverges from the book as we've talked about, and that must have been that's got to be a huge win to get that nod.
Well, I mean,
you can only imagine.
The thing that King says he doesn't like the Kubrick Shining is that it lacks heart.
Yeah.
You can definitely not say that about this film. Like for whatever, for all of the dark places that it goes, and some of them considerably dark, like this feels like it's got a humanist side to it that I think is shared by all the stuff of Danny tending to dying people, the way it deals with alcoholism, head on, whereas like in the Kubrick film, it's more of a means to an end as far as like getting Jack Nicholson to act batshit. And I think that this could have been really a really sloppy patch job of trying to get those two sensibilities and those two worlds kind of sync up, but I think it handles it so well.
I mean they're running huge risks, and the fact that it pays off as well as it does, considering the stitching, exactly what you said. And so I can absolutely see Stephen King feeling like the way this movie is commenting on that original movie is more to King's liking than the original movie was. And the funny thing is, by recasting Jack Torrance as Henry Thomas, even as a ghost, you take away the iconic aspect of Jack Nicholson himself and return Jack to just being a character, and because there's something about, it's weird, when you take Nicholson out, what you've got is just a 70s outfit. It's just a regular bunch of ratty kind of cold weather clothes. And there's something about Nicholson himself that's so iconic that he kind of overwhelms everything that he's ever in. Hey, God love him. I mean, I think that's always
Jack
always
Nicholson
true.
definitely made a career out of playing variations of his Jack Nicholson.
Well, I think he's most famous for his Christian Slater impression.
Yes. No, exactly.
That's what he's most famous for. All apologies to Jack Nicholson. He's the OG, and he's really great.
We've watched early Jack Nicholson stuff where he does not sound as much like Jack Nicholson as Christian Slater does at the same age.
Right.
Yeah.
I can picture someone come across as like that fucker.
So true Jack Nicholson confession. A lot of our friend group here in Austin think that I look like Jack Nicholson, and Jamie hates that because she is terrified of Jack Nicholson because of The Shining.
Is she terrified of you?
Obviously not.
No.
We're married.
Then it's all good. Then it's all good.
She's not doing her Shelley Duvall impression
all
and running
good.
away from me.
The
She doesn't like
question
it. Is not a it is not a comparison that she likes.
Well, Drew, I've talked with you much more than I've met you in real life, but when I've met you in real life, I have not gotten the impression that you were anything like Jack Nicholson.
I don't get that either. But I guess
Yeah.
but the question is, could you subtly apply non-shining quotes just in your day-to-day and freak her out? Like, could you
Or
do
start
like
doing like
5
Henry
easy
Thomas.
pieces?
Yeah,
Or-
start doing like Henry Thomas and just like a little bit, do your eyebrows a little so that they're a little more arched, and that would be funny.
I mean,
But
that's terrible that I'm asking you. Hey, can you just traumatize your
Freak
wife?
out your
who
wife.
I think is really a great person.
It is not
Wonderful
my it is not my choice. This is something that people that we know have latched on to.
Understand that myself.
It is not even the first Jack Nicholson tie in my life. It's just sort of reemerged. There's a whole other thing that I will talk when we're one-on-one about something that happened when I was still living in Dallas.
When people say that, do you just sit alone and go, "Where do they get a load of me?"
Yeah, never another. I'll just start
Maybe
peppering.
it's the love of the Joker.
Yeah,
I don't
love that.
I can't imagine.
I don't
really
see it.
I do wear purple on the occasion, so maybe
I
that.
have no idea, man. I don't see where that. I don't get it. But hey, who am I?
You always seem more to me like the lead singer of Green Day.
You always seem to be more a Christian Slater.
I have all the celebrities that people think that I look like over the years. I have not at one would I have picked them for myself. So
yeah, we don't get to choose that. I but I'm like, sure.
Dude,
okay.
do you have a with a risk of getting off topics majorly? Is there a celebrity people think you look like, Tony?
None of them.
Oh, Tony,
are
no,
very
Tony.
favorable.
I got this one. I've got this one. I watch Friends, and there are so many things that Joey does that I'm like, oh my god, that's such a Tony face.
That's true.
We're a very.
I've said that so many times.
Wait. Which characters?
Joey's faces that he'll make are such Tony faces.
Joey Tribbiani. It's true.
Joey Tribbiani. Matt LeBlanc.
Which actor is that?
Matt LeBlanc.
Oh,
Matt LeBlanc.
He's a
he's
a little more jockey.
We're not saying that Matt
I'm not
LeBlanc
saying
looks
his
like
persona.
Tony
I'm not
Salvaggio.
saying his persona. I'm saying the faces he makes. The faces he makes are total Tony faces.
I have
I've said
not
that. Jason can vouch for that. That I've said that like so many times. I'll be like, that's such a Tony face right there.
I believe you. Veering us back on topic.
Please.
I want to talk about the poor box office of this movie, which seems to have surprised a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's
shocking.
matters.
It's truly shocking, Drew. I mean, it blows my mind that it just laid there. It didn't do anything. So yes, continue. I'm sorry. It's shocking.
This got surprised. This was projected to be number one at the box office and have a $25 million opening. This movie only cost $50 million to make, so it's not a super high budget movie by Hollywood standards these days. But it got sneak attacked by a World War II movie called Midway, directed by Roland Emmerich, of all people, who hasn't had a hit in years.
Yeah.
And and I nobody I knew wanted. I didn't hear a single person talking about that movie.
I think it's more of a Veterans Day thing.
Maybe, and as Tony was saying before we started recording, I think that it would have been better to release this in October, and I don't understand why it wasn't, because it seems like a good Halloween time movie. But here's the thing that I started thinking about: does that ultimately matter in the long run whether or not this is a huge box office hit? Because I'm kind of wondering if this is a movie that people, because it's attached to The Shining, which kind of makes it a bit of a weird movie that it's a sequel to The Shining. Do you think that this is something that people will start to discover whether or not it's a huge hit or not. Like people go, oh, did you know that they made a sequel to The Shining? And maybe people will check it out, and it will develop a reputation over time.
I mean, all I can say is I hope so,
I hope
because
so
I
too.
like it
It's
when
done
people
really
work
well.
hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really, in my opinion, a really good movie. I still just think that the combination, like what you were saying, the combination of Veterans Day / it's a Halloween movie like right after Halloween, in the same way that it's hard to, like in the games industry, you don't want to release your game right after Christmas. Everybody spent their money on Christmas stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody's bought all the big titles have already come out, all this stuff. So doing a horror movie like so close right after, in my opinion, seems like that could possibly be it. I don't know.
Do you think they wanted to release it? Do you think they wanted to release it earlier and then they just got like they couldn't make it?
What was released?
Any number of things can happen.
Oh, well, I guess Joker.
The release date's been there for a while, though.
Yeah.
They probably didn't want to release it so close to Joker, which was a massive hit.
Sure.
And they're both WB movies, so that would make sense.
Yeah.
But why not reverse that? Because Joker probably would have been a big hit in November too. Like, there's nothing about Joker that says, "Oh, Halloween." It's not a horror
many
movie.
moving parts to that, though. I can tell you from just what I know that there's so much about all of that only a few people really know. Actually,
it's deeply disappointing. Obviously, people were caught by surprise by the reaction to The Shining. I mean, the studios were caught by surprise. Something didn't work.
You mean to Dr. Sleep?
Yeah. I'm sorry. By the reaction to Dr. Sleep, the fact that it didn't do well, that is a shock to people, and it makes it makes me worried about something interesting here, which is Terminator. They tried doing this, homage to an old movie. The new Terminator is basically just a big tip of the hat to T2. This really relies on people's fondness for an old movie. It signals, if I'm an executive right now, it's easy to take the wrong lesson, and this could totally signal I'm not going to roll the dice on something that is basically a big tip of the hat to an old piece that people might not remember.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
My thing about that though is, do you think it would have done better if they had dumbed it down a little bit and called it The Shining 2 or something like that?
Maybe.
Because Dr. Sleep, I talked to a couple of people and they're like, I don't know what that is. What is it? And I'm like, it's
the
sequel
Kiss
to The
song?
Shining. Yeah, or is it that a Marvel movie?
Well, but if you saw the trailer, you can't miss it. I mean, if you saw the trailer, you know what it is.
Shining, it's got that weird discordant music in it.
Oh, you're so right, Drew. Unfortunately, yeah. And if I were seeing this movie open and I was like, okay, it hasn't opened yet in my country, if I'm like in Japan or somewhere, I would probably immediately change the title to Shining 2. Absolutely. Like yesterday.
I would be sad if that's the thing. I don't think that. Here's the thing about what you're just saying, though, Jason. I don't know that that's going to matter because, first of all, this is cheap enough where I feel like no one's probably going to lose money on this. This wasn't like a $150 million superhero movie. This was relatively cheap for a Hollywood blockbuster. Stephen King adaptations aside have been doing pretty well the last few years. It's really, this is kind of a hiccup in something. Like we've had like a Stephen King revival. I feel like the Terminator movie was really more of a reaction to the success of the Halloween reboot. Like to me, when I saw the trailers for that, I was like, oh, they're trying to do what they're trying to do the new Halloween movie. But unfortunately, a Terminator movie is a lot more expensive to make than a guy in a.
And you have the benefit in those examples that you've just given of having the actual actors. So you're saying, oh, we get to see Jamie Lee Curtis again. We get to see Linda Hamilton and Arnold Schwarzenegger again. There's nothing like that in this film. There's nobody that you go, oh, they're bringing back Jack Nicholson.
But remember, Terminator underperformed as well. So that was my warning that we might see homages like this, fan service things dry up.
I think the Terminator franchise is terminated. Like I think it's done. It is, but here's the thing about that, Jason. There hasn't been even a competent Terminator sequel. I'm not even going to even say good. Like the last one I would say that was competent is Rise Against the Machines. Rise of the Machines, which was like over a decade ago. I was in my 20s when that movie came out. We are too deep on Terminator sequels, which are god awful.
Yep.
So
But it makes me sad
new
because
one,
this
though?
last one was pretty good. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Tony.
Did you see the new one, Drew?
I have not. I
It's
could
good?
not be. I'm
is
sure
good.
it is. I could not be bothered.
Yeah. No,
like,
I
and
hear
that's
you.
the
I
I
thing
mean,
hear-
I
is,
think
like,
that's kind of a shame. I mean, we're talking about, hey, I hope people discover this, and then you have good friends who tell you it's good, and you're like, eh.
But that's
You know.
my whole that's my whole point. I have limited budget to go
Yeah.
to movies, and I chose to spend it on going to see Dr. Sleep instead. Like I had to go, like I can go to Terminator one week, or I can go see Dr. Sleep another week. I made the active choice based on the fact that the last few Terminator sequels were stinkers, and I paid full price for them, and I regret
I
it.
got you.
Well, see, that's why we pay our $20 a month for the A-list, because then we go see all the crap.
And
It's all free.
I totally get that. And if I had that, I would have gone to see Terminator. I'm not,
Mhm.
and I will eventually see it. I don't know that I'm going to pay full price for it because I'm saving that movie money to go see Knives Out at the end of the month.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's so good. We
See?
You saw that already? How'd you see that?
Tony sees
I saw it at
everything.
Fantastic Fest.
Yeah.
Well, that like I'm not like the thing though about people discovering movies like I discover this is because we live in this world of home
Sure.
streaming and rental and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Because that's how I discovered The Shining. I was too young to see The
Yeah.
Shining when it first came out. I discovered The Shining by renting it in my video store. And correct me if I'm wrong, the original Shining wasn't that big of a box office hit.
I don't know the answer to that. You may be exactly right. I just have no idea.
Somebody could correct me on the Facebook thing, but I seem to remember hearing that somewhere. And I hope that people come back around to checking this one out.
Yeah,
'cause I do
it's
think
just the first week.
I do think it's worthy. Or even, again, it's on home, because I don't need, like, this isn't something that I necessarily need to become a franchise. So, like, if it was like a runaway hit, we would be in a danger of them doing The Shining 3 when there really is no story left. Like, I feel like this, at least we have, there's the first movie.
Shining 3, Overlooky Loo.
No,
Yeah.
I disagree that there's no story left, because I think Abra is a really interesting character, and I think
True.
you could make a really cool movie with her. But that's
I
not necessary.
I don't disagree with that, but I feel like in this world where everything we talked about this is a strange tie-in, but we talked about this years ago when we did Bubba Hotep, because for years they've been threatening us with the Bubba Hotep 2. I don't need that. Even though I really admire and like that movie, I don't need that, because sometimes it's okay for there just to be, this is the story. And even if there's like a fascinating character. Now, I'm not saying you couldn't do, like, Abra is a great character. You could potentially do something with that. I am not disagreeing. And if somebody were to go there, I probably would watch it. But I don't know if I need like a third go around in the Overlook, or Rose the Hat teams up with the Grady twins and starts a cult. Like there's a bunch of terrible directions you could take this if you're a Hollywood
executive. Rose the Hat and the 237 Ghost, Thelma and Louise adventure. That's
hopefully the 237 Ghost would put on some clothes if that's going to happen, because I couldn't see a whole movie of that.
Hey, look, I'm not gonna tie somebody down. That's her prerogative.
People can be how they want to be. Live how you want to live.
She's a
like Chuck Berry would say.
Old hag who just like
exactly.
Somebody get that woman a moo.
They're in a really fancy hotel. She could wear one of those robes, that fancy hotels have.
But yeah, there you go. The Shining verse, Thelma and Louise.
Maybe they team up to pull a heist on Pennywise.
Jesus.
To steal his deadlights. And then they get busted and get
I'm gonna have nightmares, but not because it's scary, but because it's so bad.
Julia,
prison.
So bad. Are you sure though? Are you sure bad is the word?
Julia just mentioned the robe, and suddenly I pictured the old lady bathtub ghost with like the robe and like a towel and maybe like cucumber slices on her eyes, and she's like kicking back with a mimosa.
because this is, sequel and sex sells, they would have the scene where they give her a ghost makeover at the Overlook Spa, and now she is a 23-year-old with breast implants and a nose job.
I mean, she was an actress, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So
There you
but
go.
that's not. But that's that is in the sequel we're talking
In The
about.
Shining,
Yeah,
it actually.
in The Shining, because the whole point is that he sees this hot woman and he's like embracing her, and then he realizes in the mirror that she's the old hag.
No, I'm talking about in The Shining 3, the part where they go,
Yes.
hey, let's after they danced in the kitchen, they the part where they go to a place and have a makeover, makeover montage.
Oh my God! Yes,
I did not see that movie. I did not see that movie, and I'm not sorry.
On a treadmill. All right. Well, anyway,
Stephen King has actually just tweeted about the movie's box office performance. By the way,
what did he say?
He's saying, I mostly write books and hope for the best. Box office numbers aside, this film is excellent. If people choose not to go, that's their choice. But when something is this good, I cheer for it.
Aww.
It's a terrific movie.
Good.
Go see it. So
nice.
Wait for The Shining 3, guys. That's the part 2 to that. Sorry.
That's super funny.
Terrible. Oh, that is cool though. Yeah, I mean, he really likes it. I think that's I think to come from a point where you were not a fan as a person who, thought that it changed too much, or, any of the number of reasons why he doesn't like it, to see the film, like it that much, and go, hey, I really should champion this thing because I believe it's really good. I think that's really cool.
And his going to the trouble of, it's so easy for him, but it's so hard to get somebody powerful like Stephen King to say something nice, that, because it doesn't matter. It's not going to increase his dollars. He's just saying something nice because it's something it's within his power to do, and it makes so much of a difference.
Yeah.
So that is a really Menchie thing to do. Cool. I think that definitely brings us to our final thoughts. But boy, what a picture. All right. So it was Julia, Drew, then Tony, and then me. So Julia, final thoughts on Dr. Sleep.
Gosh, I think we've hit everything. I was just reviewing the notes that I wrote. We didn't talk about the dad of Abra, or the scene where they kill, except for when I mentioned that the friend, seems okay with homicide, where they trick the crew into but then they kind of flip it. So they trick the crew, except for Rose, to come into coming out and getting Abra, but it's actually Abra's rabbit that she's projected herself onto, which is kind of awesome. That's what I mean about this character being great. But then Crow pulls a double, double, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like he tricks the trickers by knowing that something like that's gonna go wrong, and he just goes to her house, kills her poor dad, and grabs her up, and now she's their prisoner for a little while. And then there's all this wonderful stuff with Ewan MacGregor merging with her so that he can so there's all this stuff that we didn't even get to because this movie is so long. That was really, really fun, and I really enjoyed all that. I thought it was really neat how they used all these tricks. So I think that there's a lot of great stuff in this movie. I think it's definitely worth watching. And yes, I was annoyed by a few things, but it's nothing that really made it an less than great experience for me, except for the kid being tortured to death. That really, I could have done without that. That was very traumatizing for me. But other than that, because that's probably the most disturbing thing I've seen in a movie. Other than that, I thought it was a lot of fun to explore and to talk about.
Wow, thank you very much. So Tony, what were your thoughts?
Well, I personally thought it was more of a bummer than I had hoped, but that's on me. That's not that's totally me and how I perceive things. But I thought it was really well done. I went back and forth on if I enjoyed how much Shining nods there were, but overall, like I said before, I came out on the other side going, I think it is really cool. I think it's interesting that the movie is a sequel to the movie, with enough parts of the book to not be too divergent from how the book is plotted, even though there are some pretty major changes, evidently. I thought the cast was great. I really dug it. It is a shame that it's not doing better, because as far as horror movies go, I would rather see this than the umpteenth in whatever universe other horror movies. There's a lot of not as great horror, and I think this does it really well. It kind of sucks that it's not making more than perhaps it should have. But I recommend it. I think it's got enough for fans who dig The Shining. And of course, there's going to be some people who probably think it's just too egregious or don't enjoy it, and that's fine too. I totally get it, but I would recommend it.
Beautiful. Drew?
I really have come around, especially through this conversation. I've come around, because again, I had to think hard on what I saw when I watched this movie, because it is just a lot to take in. I wish actually we'd spent some more time talking about the way the dream sequence looked, because it just was gorgeous. Even the way, the weird way Rose the Hat sort of flies through this sea of stars and everything.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about the astral projection either. Exactly. Yeah,
there's so much. We could have gone for 3 hours, honestly.
And it's because of that I hope people do discover this movie, and that it does develop the fan base that it does, because I do think there's a lot of art in it. And I put this aside to the Haunting on Netflix last year, and I think that this guy Flanagan really is an interesting horror filmmaker, and I don't want to see his career stalled by the box office, because I think this guy's got a lot of talent. And even though there is some nitpicky stuff about both this and the Haunting, overall they're very well done. I really have come around to solidly just liking this movie, and now I'm kind of looking forward to watching it again whenever it hits Blu-ray or what. I actually would like to watch it back to back. We watched the mini-series because we had already reviewed the original Shining years ago when we first did our very first set of Stephen King movies, if you can believe that. So I kind of would like to watch this back with the Kubrick Shining and see how well that works, because I think that could be an interesting double feature at some point. But I do recommend that people see this. I think it's the sort of movie that's really fun to pick apart.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've listed just so many cool things that we haven't even touched on. You're right. There's so much here. It's a very, very, very dense movie, and it's funny how sometimes movies can do that. Like, you go to a movie that's deliberately minimalist, that's just a couple sets and a couple people, and that can be very interesting to think about deeply. This is a movie that is just an embarrassment of riches, and it's going in that direction. It's practically 3 movies. It's just a lot. It has an act 1 that goes for about 60 minutes. This is an interesting picture. I loved it. I'm apparently the fan that is totally happy for all the fan service. Everything that this thing was calling out, I was enjoying it very much. So it worked for me a lot. All right. So that brings us around to our time for endorsements. Let me just say, if you disagree with us, come to the Facebook page and let us know what you thought, because we're happy to let you guys decide amongst yourselves whether we're going in the right direction, or if we completely misread this movie. And sometimes our listeners will write at length, and it is so great to read those observations. I'm so happy about them, and I'm glad other people do as well. So, all right, endorsements. Starting with Julia. Julia, do you have anything that you'd like to share with us?
Oh man, I'm back on Jack Ryan again. I just am so excited to have new Jack Ryan episodes, just because I really enjoyed John Krasinski. I feel like this season is a little hard to follow so far for me. I think I'm on the 5th episode. So but it's still fun, because there's a lot of great, action stuff and whatever. So that's kind of what I've been taking in this week.
That's fabulous. Tony, what about you?
Oh man, I've just been so busy. I've been in the world of trying to get this Desert of Mars CD out. So I did finish Jack Ryan, because I was watching it while I was doing some other stuff, and it's pretty good. But I don't know. I still am going to endorse the weird rabbit hole that Amazon allows you, that Netflix used to, and they've just decided that some really good series, and then their back catalog, Amazon has a beat, hands down.
Yeah.
I love the weird rabbit hole. Find a few things that you dig that are kind of strange, and then start watching your recommendations as they get stranger and stranger, and follow that path. Because that I can't say enough good things about doing that. There's been a bunch of weird kung fu movies and strange bits that have come through. I see a bunch of stuff that I put in my queue I haven't been able to watch. Like there's a Chris Claremont documentary that's out. I saw the ad for the Blu-ray of the Alien documentary, Memories. So that's
on Amazon now,
and it's on Amazon, but it's for rent, which it's amazing, and you should totally see that. I hope we can talk to them at some point, because they're really doing some awesome stuff. That's my recommendation, is start following that weird thread into Crazy Town, which is always I added just so much stuff, and I haven't been able to watch it yet over the past few days. Probably about a dozen things where I was like, oh, that's sure, give me that. I'll put that in my queue.
Yes. Wonderful. Drew, what about you?
So I'm going to do a musical endorsement, but one I think will appeal to a lot of our listeners, which is a group out of Los Angeles called Twin Temple. Their description of themselves is satanic doo-wop. So this is a band that could coast on kitsch alone. They have a gimmick, which basically is they have this very sort of old school, I would say Phil Spector era sound to them, and yet their lyrics are all occult tinged stuff about like Satanism and witchcraft and the sort of things we would associate more with like metal bands. And that's like it's a kitschy idea. However, they're actually extremely talented. Like the woman who is the lead singer has a beautiful voice. They have the guy that's also in it is a great guitar player. He does all these sort of surfy, twangy guitar riffs. And their backing band, they have horns and strings and all these things, and it's all just top notch. So whereas like other people could take this idea and just like go like we're just going to be funny and that's it, they play it very straight, and they back it up with real musical talent. And I think that makes the weird of it much more appealing to me than if they had just been a goofy joke band. And I don't know, they've been they were my Halloween soundtrack this October. I was like jamming out to them for most of the month. I don't know if he listens to the podcast or not, but I have to give a shout out to my buddy Francis Gunn, who is a stand-up comedian in Kingston, New York. He's the one that recommended them to me. He was like, hey, Drew, you like both retro and spooky. This is your wheelhouse. I've been listening to this, but I think you should listen to this. And so he passed that on to me, and I've been listening to it for weeks now. And now I give it to you out there in internet land. Also, they're coming to Austin next weekend. They're playing the Barracuda with Amigo the Devil. So I may try to go to that show.
I have to add something. Speaking of Austin, I just watched Jimmy Fallon's show. He did a show at UT this week, and I was watching it on the DVR. And I went to UT. I lived in Austin for 10 years, and I just was like getting so teary from watching it was such a great little love letter to Austin. So if anybody has the ability to, I don't know if they have the episodes on on the DVR on the website, like the NBC website or whatever, but if you can watch, I think it's Thursday, maybe it's Thursday night's episode. If you are from Austin or you love Austin, that was a really fun Tonight Show.
My endorsement, actually, I have two. One, if you don't subscribe to Acorn TV, they have just started running Slings and Arrows. And I don't subscribe to Acorn TV, but maybe I should, because this is the only place you can see Slings and Arrows. And if you've never seen it, it was a 3-season show about these guys running a Shakespeare theater. And it is really, really funny. It starred Paul Gross, and Rachel McAdams, or is it McAdams? Is there an S on the end?
McAdams, yeah.
Yes, Rachel McAdams, right before she got super famous. It is really good. It is so funny, and you feel smart watching it. And it's on Acorn, and so they have a free trial, and you can you could try watching Slings and Arrows, and Acorn is $5.99 a month, or you can get it on DVD. But Slings and Arrows is back, and I want everybody to go watch it. The other thing is, we are about to introduce to everybody our next issue, our next volume of the Castle of Horror anthology. Volume 2 is called Holiday Horrors, and we've been busy wrapping it up, and it should be coming out in the middle of November, like literally in a week or so. So you'll be hearing more about it when you're able to pre-order it, and that'll be coming up extremely soon. I just want to, so watch this space. I will be talking about it on the page. Castle of Horror Anthology Volume 2 will be all holiday stories, so you will want to get it for your loved ones. That is it. That's all I got. I am really thankful that we got the chance to spend time talking about Dr. Sleep. I am glad that people are listening, and I hope that this is a good jumping on point. Grab friends, make them listen. We'll be very happy. No, hey, I didn't say drag them into a blizzard. I just said, yes, okay. Invite them. Fine. Invite them with ropes. All right.
I suppose if you're playing it in the car when they're in the car, that's kind of making them listen. That would be okay. That would be acceptable.
Everybody have acceptable level.
That's acceptable.
like play it in the car with your friends. Play it when you have friends over and say, "This is a podcast I like." Don't kidnap people. None of the rest of us want you to do that. That's just Jason's weird. You should get therapy, really. It's an ongoing thing. Or maybe I'm not going to get too far into this because this could veer into marital counseling. Maybe think about taking up some extracurricular activities. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But
we'll take that under advisement.
Look, I don't know what you two get up to, but yeah, I don't support kidnapping people to listen to this podcast.
Yep. Please don't kidnap your wife either. None of those.
Who would do that?
Unless it's consensual.
All right.
People can do whatever they want to get up to. Absolutely. All right. That's it for us. Everybody have a fine evening and be excellent to one another. We'll see you all very soon.
Oh, hey, and thanks to all of our veterans for your service on Veterans Day.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Happy Veterans Day. Yes. All right. Good night, everybody.
Night.